In this video, I seek sweet revenge. Revenge for every train wreck of a fantasy anime and isekai that has been made in the last 20 years. It seems one thing train wreck fantasy and isekai anime all have in common. It's basically they're just bad Dragon Quest fan fiction. And 3 is the one they ape on the most, so I want blood. There are two versions of Dragon Quest 3 on the Switch. One is port of the old school mobile version, and the other is the new 2D HD version. Which is the best version of your money? The loser will be forced to binge watch every bad fantasy and isekai that has been released in the last 20 years. We're talking about hits like The Mage with the Weakest Crest, and Another World with My Smartphone, and That Time I Was Reincarnated as a Slime.
Wait, isn't that a good one?
They'll just be watching the episodes where he's either stuck in a meeting or recapping something for the third freaking time in a row.
You. You monster.
So let's take a look at the criteria. Story, 1 point. Which one does the story the best? And since the story is kind of simple for a JRPG, only 1 point will be given in this category. Gameplay, 3 points. I'll be taking a look at the gameplay balance, new improvements, and basically thoughts. And this may be a category where I do offer some bonus points to the losers, because believe it or not, the mobile version does have a few things going for it. Graphics. How are the graphics between the two? Do you get what you pay for in the 2D HD version? Is the mobile version not as bad considering the lower price? We'll debate that here. And then finally, the value for the money. One is $60, while the other is usually around like 15. So is one worth 4 times the asking price? The winner will get 3 points in this category. So let's get down to it. The story is pretty much the same on the surface. When you were a young child, your father Ortega, one of the greatest warriors in the land of Alian, left to fight the demon Baramos, and he disappeared along the way. You have reached adulthood, and now are off on a quest to fight Baramus and track down your father. The world you're exploring looks a lot like the real world if the map maker who drew it was sniffing paint. But along the way, you'll have to find orbs that are hidden out there to unlock a giant bird to get to Baramos' castle. With that said, it doesn't end with Baramos' defeat. A new demon lord appears, coming from another land beneath the earth, the realm of Alfgard, which has been locked in darkness. Our hero will have to use some ball of lights if he wants to dispel the darkness infecting the land, eventually earning the title of Erdrick and sowing the seeds of salvation for the hero in the original Dragon Quest. So, which one tells the story better? Well, the one with the voice acting definitely has an edge, but they don't stop there. New scenes like dream scenes that connect with the goddess Rubis, and some scenes are expanded to let you know more of the story. For example, one of the things they added is one of the parts of the quest is you're going to need to find this sword that this one guy that traveled with Ortega had and throw into a volcano in order to get somewhere, and he's been in prison. In the original game, you hear about him in the hometown, and he's a spirit in the prison. Here you see flashbacks with him, and he greets you in human form and even tells you more about Ortega when you visit him for the sword. Same thing when you visit the town that keeping Ortega's helmet. This lets you get to know Ortega more, so when you do finally track him down and he dies, it matters more because he's not just some character you heard in the background. He's real and you understand his motivations, including his motivations on why he left his family and why he thought it was a good idea. And it does hit harder. The one thing he does as his last request is that you go find his child and tell him how he felt, not realizing that's who he's speaking to. Yeah, the old mobile port doesn't even show Ortega's adventures, and you don't see him until he dies. Not that I had the patience to get that far this time when I was recording, and I'll get more on that later. And on top of that, they even do better with the graphics with the storytelling. Zoma's darkness isn't eternal night, but rather a thick purple fog that's just eerie looking, adding more to the story than the voice acting ever could. And in the end, yeah, hands down, the point goes towards the 2D HD remake when it comes to the story.
What about the censorship?
What about it? Don't get me wrong, the body type A and B that modern day gaming is doing is incredibly stupid, and I think women have a lot to complain about that modern day feminism kind of wants to ironically take them out of everything. But that's far from being a deal killer. As far as the changes to the female warrior, or aka body type number 2, I can barely tell that she was wearing a thong with those sprites in the mobile. And number 2, these changes to the female warriors were done a long time ago. Dragon Quest 3 A2 DHD isn't where they made the changes. The changes started during the Dragon Quest 8 3DS port almost a decade ago. Reason why? New rating rules in Japan. If Square Enix wanted a lower age rating, the female warrior had to put those shorts on. So here's some Dragon Quest 11 images. That was released 8 years ago, and what do I see? I see shorts on the female warriors. Again, none of these affect the story or the gameplay in either way, and I kind of find it to be kind of a stupid controversy when all things are kind of considered. Is type A and B dumb? Yes. Does that mean I don't recommend the game? No. It's just one of those things. You're going to have to take it or leave it. So let's talk about the gameplay. And again, I might be persuaded to reward some extra points toward the loser if the loser does do something better than the winner. So, gameplay wise, they are similar. They feature turn based random encounters with dungeons that are mostly the same design. Some are a bit different looking in the way that they look and feel, but for the most part, 90% of the game pretty much looks and operates the same as the original. So, what changes and improvements were made? Well, for one thing, the 2D HD version has moves for all characters and classes. What do I mean by that? Well, in the original game, you got a warrior for one thing, high attack and defense stats. They did not gain MP or wisdom because they gained no special moves. They were straight attackers and they didn't do anything but attack or act like a tank character to kind of sponge up damage. Here they gain new abilities based on Dragon Quest games that came after, and some useful ones like Sword Dance, for example. And then there's also a new job called Monster Wrangler, which gets more powerful each time you find a friendly monster to recruit, and some very powerful moves of their own. So basically, in the 2D HD remake, while having a Sage or two in your party is a good idea, it's no longer the must have OP member of the group. And because of this, and some other differences in the game when it comes to showing damage done to enemies, making it easier to figure out what spells or moves to use in the game, just kind of making the game's combat feel faster, especially against bosses. And because these new moves can put metal and even liquid metal slimes in their place faster, meaning you gain EXP faster and level grinding is now easier. Another huge improvement to the original is you get dungeon maps to help you understand the floor you're on and the layout, similar to the Final Fantasy Pixel Perfect maps, and these do help you through some of the more trickier dungeons like the Necrogrand. Throw in some other quality of life improvements with Zoom letting you go to any village or any dungeon you explored, or saving at any church rather than having to find a town with a king in it. And the game is a great upgrade worthy of those 3 points. But is there anything the mobile version does do better? Well, actually, yes, there are a few things the mobile version does do better than the newer one. First off is the load screen. The Switch version of 2D HD does have some load screen whenever you do screen transitions. They're not super long, usually only a few seconds, but they are there. While the original mobile game loads instantly when you get to a new village. Another thing, unless you set the speed on ultra high in battles, the battles do take a lot longer in the new 2D HD. For the sake of your sanity, I suggest you increase the speed of combat. It was not a problem in the original as the speed was always high, but look, Mom, static images with no need to stop and do animation. Still, it's looking like the mobile did a bit better when it just comes to moving things along with quicker combat and just no load screens. And finally, the new version does add in some extra bosses, and I think it does this kind of poorly, in my opinion. Each of these new bosses come at some inconvenient time to fight bosses, and they all kind of feel like they're Roxas fight at the end of Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix. They just come out of nowhere, don't really mess with the difficulty of the dungeon they're in, and feel more like a pain to defeat rather than an extra challenge or a fun experience. The first one you will encounter is in the pyramid, which is fine, I guess, unless you're like me and you start off with a Gadabout or two in your party, so you can get a sage early on. Having to deal with a powerful demon in the Gadabout's action sabotaging me wasn't exactly what I call a fun early experience. And don't get me started with the one in Lanson, where you have to fight two huge bosses with only one party member. Who in the hell thought this was a good idea? The only thing I can say is that if you die, you do have the option to start from an autosave rather than lose half your gold. And of course, Draki mode, which isn't a mode I'm a fan of, basically giving you invincibility for when your 3 year old wants to play Dragon Quest. But still, the extra bosses, although I think they were put in better places or gave you more of a warning, they would have been fine. But the way they are implemented is kind of lame. In the original, I don't have to deal with them. So you do get an extra point mobile version, basically because there's things that do aggravate me about the 2D HD version. Yes, Dragon Quest 2D HD takes this one hands down, but it does more than just have an impressive style. Again, adding little things like the ghosts you see at night in this one town that's been destroyed and the way they're now animated now makes it extra creepy. The purple fog that I see in Alfgard makes you understand how miserable these people's lives are living under Zoma's threat. And of course, the beautifully rendered creatures and character designs that are now fully animated and make use of Akira Toriyama's unique art style is just beautifully done. The graphics in the mobile version, I will give 1.2, and it does look and feel like an old school version of Dragon Quest from the fact that the people have endless loop animation even when they're standing still, to the icons and forests kind of looking like they do in the old games. It's not without any lack of charm. I think it looks fine for what you pay for it. If only they added in just some basic animations in the combat, I think this would have been good enough for the price. But alas, they did not. And because of that, this game feels unnecessarily cheap. And because of that, the victor goes twice the points. Finally, the price, which I will put about 5 points on because one version is 5 times the price of the other. And is it worth that much? And here's the thing, if the mobile version on Switch did a few more small tweaks other than the screen ratio, I could see myself rewarding it or even splitting these points up. It's still a pretty good old school JRPG, just without the quality of life updates that the 2D HD brings, like not being sent back clear to the king with half your gold when you die, or having more complex boss battles that are a little bit easier to understand in the process. There are, however, people who enjoy the old school RPGs looking like this and looking like old school RPGs. But because they really didn't add anything, not even animation, it's hard for me to really recommend this version. So, what's the upgrade I would have asked for? Even if I don't get told where I am in the dungeon, just having a dungeon outline helps, especially in the freaking Necromon dungeon. At this point, I was tired and frustrated at this cheap hamburger version of Dragon Quest III, especially since I was playing it right after I ate the filet mignon version of the 2D HD version. I said, yeah, screw it, I'm tired of this. And I still haven't played Dragon Quest XI yet. I bought both the Switch version and the original PS4 version at release date, and I haven't had a chance to get around playing them in like the last year or two since that was released. God, getting old sucks. So I decided I might as well just get started on that and quit this kind of cheap version of Dragon Quest III. So, yes, I do believe it's worth $60 for the 2D HD version, even if it's 5 times the asking price for the mobile version. Well, there we go. You lost there, Dragon Quest Mobile. So we're going to lock you in this room that's kind of like the hyperbolic time chamber from Dragon Ball. Several weeks of binge watching bad fantasy anime on the likes of Crunchyroll await you. but it'll only be a few seconds for us. So in you go. Okay, it's done. So how was it all the time watching those bad anime? I'm sorry to tell you this, but it looks like thou art brain dead, aren't you? Well, there's only one thing to do. Take half your gold and send you back to the king. Anyways, to the audience, let me know what you think about this game, and please leave a like and subscribe. You guys have a wonderful day. Stay tuned for more content. Bye.